One question, sorry. What do you do if the, I don't know, the key of the song changes 5 times in the song?
You have to, it always changes. You have to find an average where it will work. But usually it always starts from the fundamental note. But in theory, if you want to be really, really picky, you should automate everything in every part. And this is really, really not, it's difficult to do, but good example is bass. A lot of times, if you are mixing, you will have to mix a bass guitar which was played by a poor bass player, which doesn't have the technique to compensate for the loudness of certain notes. Because the good bass player will know which notes to hit harder and which notes to hit softer, so he will have an even sound. This is a technique. And the good ones know how to do it. The bad ones are hitting the bass with the same energy for the whole time. So you get a bass that has a strong power on certain notes and basically no power on certain notes. The solution, seriously, is not to compress the shit out of those bass, but to cut the bass in digital workstation to a separate parts. If you have a punk bass line, you do 3 parts and you volume automate each one of them. So you get the same volume and then compress. I usually do it in a way that I do separate tracks. I do 1 track for 1 note, 2nd track for 2nd note, 3rd track for 3rd note. Usually there is not more than 5 different notes if we are working with a bass on that way, and then I equalize high-pass filter and notch every track, and then I route them to the bus, and then I compress them together, and then I get an even sounding bus. But this is problem solving. Actually, basically, when you have sound of any kind, it will have transients that you don't need. In modern production, transients are actually not that present as they were in the old days. But in the old days, majority of stuff was recorded to tape, and tape was incapable of retaining transients. That's so-called tape compression. The biggest part of tape compression is removal of transients, because the transient doesn't have the power to stimulate the magnetic particles, so it's basically ignored by the tape. And in digital, you have all the transients present and you have to control them. So the first step in every track is high-pass filter, and you filter for as long that you don't hear any difference when you bypass the plugin or whatever, just the band. Second thing, which is again really important, is to use a brick wall limiter or any kind of limiter which will have attack as fast as possible and release in the Haas zone, meaning below 40 milliseconds, better set below 20. So you in theory will be unable to hear the actual distortion that will happen on that transient, but you will save ridiculous amount of energy. I'm sure that everyone saw a snare drum sample that looks like that. So this is waste of energy, because the time that this lasts is usually below 20 milliseconds. And if you have a certain hit in a song and you have several instruments that have transients and they hit at the same time, they will consume several decibels of dynamic range and you won't even hear it.